The Sweetest Revenge. Chapter 1. Betrayal. I thought I had it all. A promising career, a loving family, and a fiancé who I believed was my soulmate. We were in love, or so I thought. Our engagement was the talk of the town, and I couldn't wait to start a life with him. But life has a way of pulling the rug out from under you when you least expect it. It all started when my younger sister, Lily, came to live with me temporarily. She was fresh out of college, beautiful, and full of life. I loved her dearly and wanted to help her get settled. What I didn't see was the subtle way she began to draw my fiancé, Mark, closer to her. Mark and I had been together for 4 years, and our wedding was just a few months away. But slowly, I noticed things changing between us. Mark became distant, always finding excuses to avoid spending time with me. He'd say he was busy with work or that he needed space. I trusted him, chalking it up to the stress of planning a wedding. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. One evening, I came home earlier than expected. As I walked through the front door, I heard hushed voices and laughter coming from the living room. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached. There, on the couch, were Lily and Mark, huddled close together, their faces inches apart. The betrayal was like a knife to my heart. They didn't even have the decency to look ashamed when I walked in. Lily had the audacity to smile and say, "Oh, we didn't hear you come in." Mark just sat there, frozen, knowing he had been caught. My world crumbled that day. Mark broke off the engagement, and Lily moved out shortly after. They didn't even try to hide their relationship. Within months, they were married, and I was left alone, nursing a broken heart and the sting of betrayal from the 2 people I loved most. Chapter 2. Starting Over. The years that followed were difficult. I threw myself into my work, trying to bury the pain. I became successful in my career, but my personal life was a void. I watched from a distance as Lily and Mark lived their lives. They seemed happy, but I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. I had lost so much because of them, and I didn't want anything to do with their lives. But life has a funny way of balancing the scales. 10 years passed, and in that time, I found myself again. I traveled, met new people, and discovered a strength within me that I didn't know existed. I was no longer the broken woman who had lost everything. I was someone new, someone stronger. One day, while attending a charity event, I met a man named James. He was kind, successful, and most importantly, he saw me for who I truly was. We started dating, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to be happy again. James wasn't just a boyfriend. He became my best friend, my confidant, and eventually my husband. Chapter 3. The Reunion. Fate has a way of bringing things full circle. 10 years after the betrayal, I found myself at a family gathering, something I had avoided for years. But this time, I was different. I was confident, successful, and most importantly, happily married to a man who adored me. Lily was there, of course. Time had not been kind to her. The years had taken their toll, and the woman who once exuded confidence now seemed worn and bitter. When she saw me, she couldn't hide her surprise. She had expected me to remain the heartbroken sister she had left behind. Instead, she found a woman who had risen from the ashes. The first thing she did was mock my past. "Still single, I see," she sneered, her eyes scanning me with the same coldness she had shown years before. I smiled, a genuine smile that came from knowing how far I had come. "Actually, Lily, I'm married. Happily so." I turned, and there was James, coming up behind me, looking every bit the successful, loving husband that he was. Lily's face fell. She couldn't hide her shock as James wrapped his arm around my waist and kissed my cheek. "Honey, you look stunning," he whispered, his eyes full of love and admiration. Mark, who had been standing next to Lily, looked at James and then at me. a flicker of regret passing through his eyes. I could see it. The realization that he had made a mistake, that the life he had built with my sister was not the one he had truly wanted. But that was no longer my concern. Chapter 4. Karma's Kiss. As the evening progressed, it became clear that Mark and Lily's marriage was not as perfect as they had pretended. Lily, who once had everything, was now envious of the life I had built. And Mark? He could barely look me in the eye. The years had not been kind to them, and the happiness they had stolen from me had turned into a curse. It was then that I realized the true meaning of karma. I didn't need to seek revenge. Life had done that for me. Lily had taken what she thought was mine, but in the end, she had lost far more. I had found love, happiness, and success, while she was left with a broken marriage and the bitter realization of what she had become. As James and I left the gathering, he squeezed my hand. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern in his eyes. I looked back at him, the man who had given me everything I had once lost and more. "I'm more than okay," I replied, smiling. "I'm finally free." And with that, I left the past behind, stepping into a future that was bright and full of promise, knowing that I had won in the end, not through revenge, but by living a life full of love and happiness. In this compelling tale of betrayal and redemption, the protagonist endures the ultimate act of treachery when her younger sister steals her fiancé just months before their wedding. Heartbroken and shattered, she spends the next decade rebuilding her life, focusing on her career and personal growth. While her sister seems to have it all, the protagonist quietly rises from the ashes, eventually finding true love in an unexpected place. 10 years later, a chance encounter at a family gathering brings the past back to the surface. Her sister, now bitter and worn by the years, mocks her perceived single status, unaware that she is now married to a loving and successful man. As the protagonist confidently reveals her new life, the tables turn, and it becomes clear that karma has dealt her sister a cruel hand. The story is a powerful reminder that true happiness and success are the best forms of revenge, and that those who betray others often find themselves the most betrayed in the end.